We are now 2 weeks into the 2025 college football season, so I think at this point we've had enough time to figure out some teams that are currently fraudulent. Some of the teams in today's video were expected to be pretty bad, and others were supposed to be pretty good. I decided to compile 8 examples of teams that I think are frauds so far in 2025, and we're going to talk about why I think so, go through their seasons so far, and how things could turn out for them. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's talk about some fraudulent teams for 2025. Alright, so our first team we're going to talk about is out of the ACC, and that is the Virginia Tech Hokies. Going into the season, Brent Pry was under a lot of pressure, as after being disappointing in 2024, he was expected to bounce back and hopefully get the Hokies back on track. They returned Kyron Drones at quarterback, but so far that has not really helped them. In week 1, they faced off against number 13 South Carolina, and that was the Sunday afternoon slot game. Kyron Drones made some terrible decisions with the ball, and their defense was actually decent, but they ended up losing 24-11, and they were already behind the 8 ball. They'd have a chance in week 2 to finally get things back on track, as Vanderbilt from the SEC would come to town. I don't think anybody thinks Vanderbilt was going to make the college football playoff, but this isn't the same Vanderbilt team we're used to. Ultimately, Virginia Tech ended up getting blasted at home 44-20, their defense was nowhere to be found, and right now it looks like Brent Pry could be one of the first coaches fired. I know he shouldn't overreact about 2 weeks, but Virginia Tech is definitely fraudulent. Kyron Drones is not as good of a quarterback as I thought he was, and looking at their schedule, they may only have 3 or 4 wins. They definitely will beat Old Dominion and Wofford, they'll probably take care of Wake Forest, and then maybe beat Cal or Virginia. It's going to be a long season in Blacksburg, and Virginia Tech so far has been fraudulent. Our second team on the list is also out of the ACC, and I think the Syracuse Orange are fraudulent. I mean, I could have told you this going into the offseason, as they lost their top 3 receivers, lost their starting quarterback to the NFL, and also lost their starting running back LaQuint Allen to the NFL. Syracuse had a great season in year 1 under Fran Brown, but it was always going to be a little bit difficult in year 2. After bringing in Steve Angeli from Notre Dame and Ricky Collinson from LSU, Angeli ended up getting the job, but he hasn't exactly sold me yet. Angeli has 691 yards with 3 touchdowns and 2 picks, and so far the Orange are 1-1 after getting beat by Tennessee and then barely surviving against UConn. I know UConn actually had a good year last year, but so far Syracuse has gotten beat and they should have easily lost to UConn, so I think they're going to end up getting exposed here soon. They need to have better quarterback play, and hopefully those sprints after the game from Coach Brown will help them out. Looking at their schedule, I would probably pick them to maybe win 2 more games, as I'd probably favor them against both North Carolina and Colgate, and maybe they beat Duke, and maybe they beat Boston College. Besides that, I wouldn't pick them to win another game. Man, I feel like every year we talk about how Iowa's finally going to have good quarterback play, or how they're finally going to win more than 9 or 10 games and take it to the next level. Kirk Ferentz just can't seem to do that, as this Iowa team might actually be worse than years past. I thought Spencer Petras was the lowest bar possible for an Iowa quarterback, but it looks like the big-time expensive quarterback from South Dakota State may not actually pan out for him. At this point, it is definitely not a quarterback problem, as it is totally an Iowa problem, as Gronowski is literally one of the winningest quarterbacks ever in college football history and has a ridiculous amount of yards, and he is still absolutely horrible at Iowa. He has 127 yards through 2 games, and Iowa is currently 1-1. Sure, they beat Albany in week 1, but that doesn't really count. In week 2 on the road against Iowa State, they ended up holding it close, but they lost 16-13 in the Cy-Hawk game. Maybe it's a little bit harsh to say that Iowa is fraudulent, but with an offense this bad, I don't know what to do with them. They'll probably beat UMass, but besides that, is there another team on the schedule they're going to beat? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure the Wisconsin game will end up being close, but maybe they beat Rutgers, and maybe they beat Michigan State? I don't know. I definitely don't think Iowa's going to a bowl game with how horrible their offense has been so far. For our 4th school, we're going to talk about a former Power 4 team in the Oregon State Beavers, who seemingly were starting to hit their stride a couple of seasons ago. Jonathan Smith honestly revitalized the Oregon State program, but Trent Bray just may not be it. Going into the offseason, they finally went out and got a big-time quarterback as they grabbed Malik Murphy from Duke, but so far he's been a mixed bag. Oregon State played against Cal in week 1, and they got destroyed by a true freshman quarterback. Cal was also expected to be really terrible, so the fact they got blown out 34-15 was a terrible sign for the Beavers. In week 2, they had a chance to bounce back, but ultimately would end up losing 36-27 at the hands of Fresno State. In the past, they would have gotten a lot more flack for this because it would have been a Mountain West school beating a Power 4 team, but right now they're on equal footing. It still doesn't take away the fact that I don't know if Oregon State wins more than 2 games the rest of the season, as maybe they beat Wake Forest, they probably beat Lafayette, they probably beat Sam Houston, and then maybe they beat Tulsa or Wazoo. They definitely have a very unique and interesting schedule, and we'll see how Oregon State does, but for now it looks like they're fraudulent this year. At number 5, we go over to the Big 12, and we're to talk about the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Mike Gundy has been there pretty much forever, but he might truly be nearing the end of his leash. With the way that Oklahoma State played this past weekend, I would not be shocked by anything anymore. In the offseason, Oklahoma State would have to replace both Ollie Gordon and Alan Bowman, so they ended up having a depth chart that had 5 starting running backs, and then House Heine, a transfer quarterback from TCU. He got hurt, so then true freshman Zane Flores would also have to step up. In week 1, Oklahoma State struggled a little bit with a bad UT Martin team and only won 27-7, and this past week, despite some of the weird Mike Gundy trash talk about Oregon's home football environment, the Ducks won 69-3. It was one of the most pathetic performances I've ever seen from a Power 4 team, and Oklahoma State's season is in big trouble. When you take a look at their schedule, they play Tulsa, which I don't even know is a guarantee to win, and after that, I would literally not pick them in another game. UCF, Cincinnati, and Arizona look better than I expected. Houston's probably better than them, and then maybe they knock off K-State. I still think the Wildcats are going to figure it out at some point, but if they don't beat Tulsa, they might only win 1 game this year. Man, Billy Napier almost convinced us he was actually a good coach and that Florida was legit. Unfortunately, he's not been able to see the success he had at Louisiana and Gainesville, as Florida has underachieved the last couple of seasons, but because of a good finish to last year, Florida got a ton of hype. DJ Lagway was back at quarterback, but so far, the same old stuff is still happening. Maybe they shouldn't have scheduled Long Island University in week 1, because that didn't help them out at all, as in week 2 at home in the Swamp against USF, they made error after error in the last few minutes before the Bulls kicked a game-winning field goal. USF is obviously pretty decent this year, but this is one of the worst losses Florida has had in a long time. Given the amount of hype that the Gators have had, this is extremely disappointing, and to me it feels like their season's over. They'll now play 3 straight top 8 teams, then go on the road to A&M, and then 4 of their last 5 games are also against ranked teams, and then you also have Mississippi State and Kentucky. The only game I'd pick them to win right now is probably the game against Kentucky, and if Florida's not careful, they might literally go 2-10 or 3-9, which would be really bad. For now though, they look like frauds. Hate to say it, but I just don't think Coach Foster is going to make it at UCLA, and I never thought the hire was all that great. DTR really kind of bailed out UCLA for a couple of years, and now they're back to normal. Going into the offseason, they would grab Tino Sunseri from Indiana, and they also grabbed the number 1 quarterback in the portal in Nico Imaliava, but that has been a disaster. They ended up getting killed 43-10 at home in week 1, and the game was literally not even competitive. If the sky was not falling in Los Angeles after that game, it definitely was last week, as they traveled on the road to UNLV and lost 30-23 by way of Dan Mullen's Rebels. Mullen's in his first year as a head coach, and UCLA just dropped a game to a group of 5 team. That was also probably their second best chance at winning a game this season, as they will play New Mexico this week, which they should beat, but after that, their best chance at a win is probably on the road against Northwestern, or maybe at home against Maryland. I don't know. UCLA is in a really bad spot, and I never really thought they could be good to begin with, but they've definitely played like frauds. Last but not least, we have the most fraudulent team in all of college football, and that is the Kansas State Wildcats. They are typically one of the more consistent programs in all of college football, as they always do more with less, and by the end of the season, everyone expected them to be Big 12 title contender. We sort of saw that they were frauds in week 0 against Iowa State, as they just did not play very good football, but to be fair, it was against a ranked team, and it was also week 0. In week 1, we found out exactly who Kansas State is, as it took a miracle last-second comeback for them to beat an FCS North Dakota team at home. Avery Johnson bailed them out at the end of the game, and hopefully that was just a one-time fluke. Nope. This past weekend, they ended up dropping a home game to Army, who just lost to an FCS team at home. Army had a legitimate case at being the worst FBS team in college football going into week 2, and they just went into Manhattan and won. Honestly, K-State should be 0-3 with a loss to an FCS school and a bad Army team, but they got lucky there. I still think Kansas State isn't that terrible though, as Avery Johnson is a good quarterback and they should get things figured out, but the narrative for the season is completely different now. They're obviously, in my opinion, not going to make a bowl game, but I still think they have a chance at beating teams like Oklahoma State and maybe even Arizona or UCF. Kansas State is the most fraudulent team in all of college football, and I had no idea that losing DJ Giddens would be such a big deal for them. Yeah, in today's video we talked about 8 teams who in my opinion have been complete frauds in 2025 so far, and let me know what you think. Am I overreacting? Which team should have been on the list? And what team has had a good start that you think will end up flaming out? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.